Lu Shu had a rough life right from the start. He was abandoned by his mom when he was just a baby. She was carrying him through a dark alley one day and stopped at a shop. She told the owner she'd be back after buying some meat. Of course, she never came back. The shopkeeper, left with no other choice, took him to an orphanage. Lu Shu grew up there, always being picked on by other kids. But he had one true friend, Xiaoyu, who always had his back. Whenever Lu Shu got bullied, Xiaoyu would report it to the caretaker. She was there for him even when he was sick, making sure he was okay. As Lu Shu got older, he finally left the orphanage, but life wasn't much better. He still felt lonely. One day, he was just sitting around, throwing a rock at a wall, lost in thought when Xiaoyu showed up, smiling. He asked her why she sneaked out of the orphanage again. He tried to take her back, but she refused, saying she wanted to stay with him. Feeling like he didn't want her to leave either, Lu Shu agreed, and they spent time together. During a festival, they overheard a conversation between a couple about a guy who could do some crazy things, like shooting blue light from his hands, and another guy who could lift over 2,000 kilos. They weren't sure if it was a superpower or some kind of scam. While Lu Shu was eavesdropping, Xiaoyu pulled him away to see a fire show up front. During the show, something really strange happened. The fire performer threw flames into the air, and then time seemed to freeze. The fire wrapped around Lu Shu, and he saw a weird memory of a sword spinning in space. His necklace, which he had been wearing for a while, suddenly glowed really bright for a few seconds before everything returned to normal. The fire performer didn't seem to notice anything and kept performing like nothing had happened. Lu Shu was completely confused, trying to figure out if what just happened was magic or some crazy superpower. After the show, Xiaoyu asked him what he thought, but Lu Shu had no answers to give. Later, after the festival, Lu Shu was still thinking about the weird event. He wandered around the streets, tossing a rock, when he suddenly didn't notice a truck speeding towards him. The driver tried to avoid hitting him, but it was too late. Lu Shu got hit and found himself floating in space. He could hear his mom's lullaby in the background, the one she sang to him when he was a baby. His whole life flashed before his eyes as he lay there, bleeding on the street. Just as he was about to lose consciousness, something weird happened. A loading bar appeared in the air, and once it filled up, a screen popped up, showing something like a game interface. Lu Shu's necklace started glowing even brighter, and it floated off his neck, lifting him off the ground. It wrapped him in light, and the light traveled into his heart, flowing through his body like some kind of liquid. Suddenly, his heart started beating again, and he gently floated back down to the ground. The truck driver, thinking he had killed Lu Shu, got out of his truck. But Lu Shu, still alive and confused, opened his eyes, wondering what the heck had just happened. He had no pain at all. He wondered if he had some kind of superpower now, but quickly moved on to the next thing, demanding compensation from the driver for hitting him. The driver, terrified, thought Lu Shu was a ghost and quickly drove off, leaving Lu Shu standing there, disappointed. He went to a nearby convenience store to grab some noodles, but the cashier freaked out when he saw blood on Lu Shu's head. Above the cashier's head, Lu Shu saw a number appear. It said plus 233. He didn't want to scare the guy more, so he paid quickly, grabbed his noodles, and rushed out. But as he walked, he accidentally bumped into a couple, and numbers appeared above their heads too. He was confused, but didn't think too much of it. When he got home, Xiaoyu noticed the blood on his head and asked what happened. He casually said that a truck hit him but that it was no big deal. After cleaning up, Lu Shu took a closer look at himself. As he was sitting on his bed, thinking about everything, he suddenly noticed a strange mark on his palm. Confused, he closed his eyes to think about what was going on. But as soon as he did, a display screen popped up in front of him, playing loud game music. The screen showed some weird symbols, and then a list of names appeared, with some points next to them. Lu Shu had no idea who these people were. But then he remembered the numbers that had appeared over people's heads earlier. He realized that these numbers were linked to people's emotions, and that when he scared people, their negative emotions became his points. He smiled to himself, thinking that he might have awakened some kind of superpower. He even gave himself a title, Demon Lord, because the more negative emotions he collected, the stronger he became. Xiaoyu, overhearing him, yelled at him to be quiet and asked if he had lost his mind. Lu Shu, feeling a little cocky, yelled back, telling her to keep cooking and mind her own business. Every time he made her mad, his points grew higher. He decided to try out the lottery feature on the display screen, spinning the wheel to see what he could win. The first few tries, he didn't win anything. But on his third try, he won an apple. Excited, he ate it, and the moment he did, he felt a rush of energy. His body started glowing, and he felt more powerful. He was hooked. He tried the lottery again, won a few more times, and eventually ended up with a lullaby scroll. When he sang it, everything around him froze. A bright star appeared from space, heading straight for his room. Lu Shu was amazed but also confused. He realized that every time Xiaoyu got angry at him, his points grew. He was starting to get the hang of his new abilities. They kept arguing, and every time she yelled, he gained more points. One day, while they were watching the news, Lu Shu suddenly sensed danger. He rushed out of the house, telling Xiaoyu to stay inside. She didn't want to be left behind, but he insisted. Once outside, Lu Shu saw two mysterious men in black jumping between rooftops. He tried to hide, but one of the men saw him. Lu Shu quickly came up with a story, pretending he was just picking radishes off the roof. The men didn't seem to believe him, but they let him go, warning him to be careful. Later, Xiaoyu asked him who he had been talking to, but before he could answer, a man fell from the roof. Lu Shu recognized the man as the fire performer from the festival. He suspected the fire might have been part of something bigger, and he wondered if the man had started the fire to escape from the men in black. He and Xiaoyu rushed to check on the performer, who turned out to not be unconscious as they had thought. Lu Shu realized that by upsetting the performer, he could earn even more points. So, he continued to mess with him, making him angrier and collecting more points. Eventually, the performer woke up and demanded water, but Lu Shu gave him some snow, which just made him angrier. The more frustrated the performer got, the more points Lu Shu earned. He pinned the performer down, and each time the man tried to fight back, Lu Shu's points grew. Lu Shu pretended to help him, but all he cared about was collecting the points. Eventually, the performer gave up, and Lu Shu let him go, feeling satisfied with his new power. Back in his room, Lu Shu realized his display screen had a shop feature. He bought a celestial fruit, which boosted his power even more. The moment he ate it, another star shot down from space and entered his body. He found himself floating in a space zone, surrounded by glowing planets. When he came back to reality, he realized he was even stronger now. With his newfound powers, Lu Shu decided to head to the fire scene to collect even more negative emotions and grow stronger. The next day, Lu Shu set up his egg stand, but instead of charging normal prices, he decided to make them really high. This made the customers angry, and Lu Shu ended up getting a lot of negative points from their complaints. Later, during a free period at school, a girl in class yelled at everyone to be quiet so she could watch a video about awakened people. Some students gathered around to watch with her, but Lu Shu wasn't interested in that. Instead, he pulled out his phone and watched the video on his own. The video explained that awakened people are ranked into 6 levels from A to F. Here's what the levels mean. Level F, just a little stronger than normal people. Level E, people who have elemental powers. Level D, people who can stop weapons easily. Level C, people who can resist and fight against human weapons. Level B, people who can draw power from the earth and the sky. Level A, the strongest, able to connect with the earth and sky in a very powerful way. The video also said that everyone will eventually awaken, either naturally or through training. Lu Shu realized that he was at level F and started thinking about how to level up. He stood up in class and loudly said someone was awakened, catching everyone's attention. When his classmates asked who he was talking about, Lu Shu smiled and said the video didn't specify, which annoyed everyone. As expected, this gave him more negative points. Just then, a classmate burst into the room and said someone was actually awakened. Everyone thought he was talking about the video, but he insisted it was real, and the awakened person was Lai Kai, a classmate. Apparently, Lai Kai was having a heated argument with a teacher and had taken the teacher to the roof to settle it. Everyone rushed to the roof, where they saw Lai Kai holding the teacher over the edge, threatening to drop him. Lu Shu stepped forward and asked the class leader why he was making such a scene and disturbing the school. This made the class leader angry, and he yelled at Lu Shu to shut up, giving him more negative points. Meanwhile, 2 men in black showed up, trying to stop Lai Kai. Lu Shu could sense all the negative emotions from the people around him and wondered how he could collect them. Lai Kai raised the teacher higher, about to throw him. The principal tried to calm him down, saying he should reconsider because there would be legal consequences. But Lai Kai responded that since he was underage, he wouldn't be punished. Lu Shu stepped forward and explained that even underage people could be punished under the law. His explanation shocked everyone, and by the time he was done, Lu Shu had earned about 10,000 negative points. Lai Kai, clearly bored with Lu Shu's talking, lost focus, which allowed the men in black to step in and stop him, saving the teacher. The situation calmed down, and everyone went back to class. One of Lu Shu's female classmates praised him for his quick thinking and asked how he knew Lai Kai wouldn't drop the teacher. Lu Shu just shrugged and said he didn't know and wasn't worried about it. This made the girl even more annoyed, earning Lu Shu an extra 400 points. Back in class, Lu Shu noticed two medical officials in full gear with equipment for blood tests. The teacher explained that they were testing for awakened abilities. Lu Shu didn't want to get involved, so he pretended to have a stomach ache. But a big medical officer blocked the door, ruining his escape plan. Lu Shu ended up being the first person they drew blood from. After school, he rushed home because he knew Lu Xiaoyu would be waiting for him. She always got worried if he was late. When he walked through the door, Lu Xiaoyu asked why he was so late and mentioned having a headache. Lu Shu felt her forehead and realized she had a fever. He let her rest in bed while he went to get her some medicine. She asked for the baked potatoes he had promised her, and he assured her he bought them. Lu Xiaoyu told him she had gotten sick while washing his clothes outside in the cold water. Lu Shu told her to rest, and he would go get some medicine for her. As he stepped out, he remembered the stellar fruit, which might help her get better. He decided to try spinning the lottery wheel. He spun it 5 times but didn't win anything, which frustrated him. On the 6th try, he won something, but it wasn't the stellar fruit. He kept trying and eventually won a red fruit instead. He rushed back to Lu Xiaoyu, gave it to her, and she ate it. Almost immediately, her fever was gone, and she felt better. She asked what kind of fruit it was since it disappeared quickly when she ate it. Lu Shu joked and said it was a devil's fruit, but Lu Xiaoyu didn't laugh. The next day at school, the teacher announced that the city had started a new class for students with special abilities called the Xiaoyu class. The teacher introduced their new instructor, Zifei, and Lu Shu was shocked when he saw who it was. Zifei was one of the men in black he had seen the night of the fire. Zifei explained that he would call the names of students chosen to join the special class. When the teacher started calling names, Lu Shu's name was called last, and everyone was shocked. This earned him even more negative points. All the students chosen were taken to a special classroom where Zifei would teach them about cultivation. Lu Shu started wondering why the government was so involved in these classes. He wondered if the men in black were secretly working with the government. Zifei started explaining that they would use a special liquid metal called sodium-potassium alloy. This metal could react with the aura of the earth and reveal their abilities. He held up a tube with the alloy, which began to glow. Lu Shu thought it sounded a bit too scientific, but a student next to him explained that this alloy had been used in nuclear reactors. With the aura returning to Earth, metals like this could be used to transmit energy and even be turned into magic items. Lu Shu was impressed with the student's knowledge. Zifei continued, saying that when the blood of an awakened person touched the alloy, it would turn from silver to black. The darker it got, the stronger the person was. The alloy would help classify students into levels from A to F based on how dark the alloy turned. Zifei explained that 17 months ago, there was a change in the environment, causing an increase in positrons. This triggered the awakening of new abilities and a new way for humans to grow stronger. He told the class that just because someone had a higher level didn't mean they were the best. It all depended on how well they trained and used their skills. He encouraged them to keep working hard, saying they were the future of the country. After class, Lu Shu walked with his new friend, Jiang. Some of the other students mocked Lu Shu for being at level F, the lowest class. Jiang asked if Lu Shu wasn't bothered by the teasing, but Lu Shu said he didn't care. He then texted their study group, calling them chicken heads, which made them mad and earned him more negative points. From that day on, Lu Shu kept eating the stellar fruit to level up. It wasn't happening fast, but he kept at it. Every time he ate the fruit, it disappeared, making him feel a little stronger. His display screen showed that he had used up all his fruit, and now the fruit was in the store where he could buy it for 1,000 negative points. Lu Shu didn't mind. He decided to spin the wheel to see if he could win anything else. One day, Lu Xiaoyu was sitting at the table when she smelled something stinky. She turned to see Lu Shu holding a bowl of stinky tofu. She was impressed that he was winning food, not just fruit, from the wheel. He gave it to her, but she said she wanted pancakes and fruit instead. Lu Shu kept spinning the wheel, hoping to get pancakes or fruit, but he kept winning stinky tofu. Lu Xiaoyu started whining that Lu Shu wasn't cool anymore because he couldn't get her the food she wanted. Lu Shu didn't give up. He kept spinning until finally he won something new. A scroll appeared, and when Lu Xiaoyu touched it, it glowed black and entered her body. A black star appeared in the sky and entered her. She found herself in a celestial zone. When she came back to reality, she asked Lu Shu what happened. He told her that she must have awakened and told her to concentrate. Lu Xiaoyu closed her eyes again and found herself back in the celestial zone. A big planet there emitted black miasma, which entered her body. When she opened her eyes, she realized she had awakened. Lu Shu was a bit worried because her celestial map was the opposite of his, and he wondered what that meant. He was also annoyed by how many stinky tofu items were piling up in his inventory. He hoped he would get something new soon, but for now, he came up with an idea. He could sell the stinky tofu for some extra cash. The next morning, Lu Shu was ready to start his new business, but as he left his house, he saw his old neighbor practicing with a sword. The old man greeted him and asked where he was headed. Lu Shu said he was going to make money for his tuition. Then, he asked the old man what he was practicing. The man told him it was swordsmanship and asked if Lu Shu wanted to learn. Lu Shu was shocked when he said no, which made the old man disappointed. The old man thought Lu Shu had the skills he was looking for in a student, but Lu Shu wasn't interested, which caused him to collect some negative points. After that, Lu Shu went to his egg stand to start selling his stinky tofu. He managed to make a lot of sales, and with all the negative emotions around him, he collected plenty of negative points. With enough money in hand, he swaggered into school, which annoyed his classmates and people in his Xiaoyu class. Throughout the day, Lu Shu kept racking up more negative points as his classmates continued to get irritated with him. Later, when Lu Shu got home, he decided to use his negative points to summon the golden celestial fruit. When he consumed it, he found himself in his celestial map. But this time, things looked different. The 7 planets around the big planet were glowing brightly, and the mark on his arm was shining too. Lu Shu pointed his marked hand at one of the planets, and all the light from it moved to the bigger planet in the center. The light shot upward, forming a sword in his hand. The sword hovered in the air, and Lu Shu realized he could move it around without touching it. He concluded that the 7 planets were nebula stars, and the big one in the middle represented his soul. When he opened his eyes, he tried summoning the sword again, and this time, he made it spin around the room. It even pierced through some of his books. Lu Shu was excited, realizing that by unlocking just one nebula star, he was able to achieve this. He thought that if he could unlock all 7 nebula stars, he would become much stronger. The next day at school, Zai-Fei, the teacher from the Xiaoyu class, was using a divine circle to examine a student. Everyone watched as the stone in his hand glowed. Lu Shu asked what the stone was, and Jiang explained it was a spirit stone, which contained a lot of energy. The students would get their own spirit stones soon to use for practice. Zai-Fei continued the demonstration, telling the class that they would all have to practice and report on their progress. He introduced a technique called the 2-instrument contract metaphysics chapter, which would improve their performance. Lu Shu tried practicing with his spirit stone, and as the light from the stone surrounded him, his sword suddenly became violent and collided with the light, putting it out. Lu Shu opened his eyes, breathing heavily. He wondered why his celestial map was acting so aggressively and concluded that Zai-Fei's teaching didn't really help him. The next day, Lu Shu left his stall and noticed his old neighbor was once again practicing with his sword. He decided to ask the man more about it. The old man offered to teach Lu Shu if he wanted to learn, but Lu Shu hesitated and said he'd like to, but there was a problem. The old man told him to start training, and then they could discuss the issue. Lu Shu agreed, and in the evening, after his day's activities, he returned to start training with the old man. The old man handed Lu Shu a set of weight belts, ranging from 30 pounds to 300 pounds. He instructed Lu Shu to wear them during training. Lu Shu didn't understand the point, arguing that the techniques they were learning in the Xiaoyu class already taught them how to increase strength directly. The old man explained that Shizujin, a respected teacher, focused on transmitting the teachings of Taoism, emphasizing that no one was better than him at training. Lu Shu wondered if Shizujin was a member of the Heavenly Network and the one designing the exercises for the class. The old man insisted that Lu Shu couldn't skip any steps in his training and should start with the lightest belt, gradually working up to the heaviest. Lu Shu casually picked up the lightest belt and tossed it in the air like it was nothing, catching it easily. He then asked the old man if they could skip straight to the heaviest belt. The old man got frustrated, explaining that Lu Shu's awakened power system allowed him to handle such tasks effortlessly. The old man then picked up a piece of paper from his table, and Lu Shu wondered what he was going to do with it. With intense focus, the old man enveloped the paper in mana energy, making it stiff. He then swung it, and a powerful flow of energy shot out, slicing a nearby wall cleanly in half. Lu Shu watched in awe, realizing the power of focus technique. The old man advised Lu Shu that mastering one thing was better than trying to do many things, and that, despite all the other techniques, the way of the sword was the most important. The old man handed Lu Shu a rusted sword and told him to use it to practice cutting the air. Lu Shu took a stance, but the old man corrected his posture, explaining that Lu Shu lacked control of his body. He reminded Lu Shu that muscle memory wasn't enough, talent was also necessary. Lu Shu shed his jacket, focused more, and began swinging the sword with greater precision. After swinging the sword 1,000 times, Lu Shu finally mastered the first step of the sword technique. The next day, Lu Shu's display screen showed that Shizujin was at his house. He quickly ran home, where he found Lu Xiaoyu and the old man talking with Shizujin outside. Lu Xiaoyu asked why Shizujin was there, and Lu Shu explained that he was there to retrieve something, which made her rush inside to help him. Shizujin then turned to Lu Shu, asking who he was. Lu Shu introduced himself as a student from a nearby school. Shizujin asked if Lu Shu was the old man's student, but the old man scoffed, saying he couldn't teach a level F student like Lu Shu. Shizujin left after that. Lu Shu noticed that Shizujin was a level B and asked the old man if he was part of the top board in the Heavenly Network. The old man explained that Shizujin was just an ordinary member of the network and a level B commoner. He reassured Lu Shu that no one would suspect he was teaching him. Lu Shu then asked if Shizujin had offended the old man in any way, but the old man just shrugged it off, quoting a saying about friends not needing a formal welcome. Before leaving, the old man gave Lu Shu a test tube containing sodium-potassium alloy and asked him to check their levels. That night, Lu Shu and Lu Xiaoyu both participated in the test. When their blood mixed with the alloy, both their tubes turned dark. Lu Shu was surprised to see his tube turn as dark as level A. But then, the tube started to bubble, and Lu Shu changed to blue, while Lu Xiaoyu developed a dark swirl in her tube. They both noticed that the patterns in the alloy looked like their celestial maps. Lu Shu wondered if there was a level higher than level A. Later, Lu Shu meditated in his room. 2 nebula stars in his celestial map lit up. When he opened his eyes, he saw a blue light layer covering his body. He picked up a knife and cut himself, but there was no injury. He realized that the second layer of his nebula was providing protection. He wondered how Lu Xiaoyu was doing with her awakening. Meanwhile, Lu Xiaoyu was tossing in her bed, having an intense awakening in her celestial map. All her nebula stars were dark, and one of them grew so big that it almost sucked her in like a black hole. The next morning, Lu Shu went to her room to wake her up and found her standing on her bed with black eyes. She snapped out of it and hugged him, saying she had awakened 1 nebula star. Lu Shu congratulated her but boasted that he had already awakened 2 nebula stars, which made her pout. He asked if she could show him what her star looked like, but she said she couldn't. Instead, she showed him her ability by summoning an ant onto her palm. She explained that her powers allowed her to sense the energy of deceased beings and summon them back to life. The ant had died the day before, and she could now control it. Lu Shu was amazed as the ant climbed onto his finger. He asked if she could do more, and they went outside to test her abilities. Lu Xiaoyu created a small black bird that flew around and landed on Lu Shu's shoulder. He asked how long she could control it and if it drained her energy. She explained that her abilities didn't have a time limit and didn't weaken her, since the energy was condensed by the black hole and required less effort to control. One night, Lu Xiaoyu woke up with dark eyes, but they quickly cleared up as she rushed to Lu Shu's room, knocking loudly on his door. When Lu Shu opened it, he was surprised to see a man standing in front of him. This man was someone Lu Shu had seen the night before, committing a robbery and murder. Lu Xiaoyu had somehow summoned him, and Lu Shu decided to test her powers. He used his abilities to surround himself with a protective shield and block the man's attacks. Then, he summoned a sword from his celestial map, which struck the man fatally. Once the man was defeated, the sword returned to Lu Shu. Lu Shu wasn't scared, just surprised by how quickly Lu Xiaoyu had developed her powers. He asked her if she could control the man, and she confirmed that she could make him do anything she wanted by just thinking it. To prove it, she made the man take a fighting stance. Lu Shu then became serious and warned Lu Xiaoyu never to show her powers to anyone. Lu Xiaoyu agreed and shared that she had also learned where the man had hidden the stolen money. She showed Lu Shu the memory of the man burying the money on a hilltop with 2 other awakened individuals. The next day at school, the students gathered for a meeting with their new director, Lai Xiao. Lai Xiao gave a short speech, telling the students to work hard and dismiss them. In their Dao Yuan class, Lai Xiao and Sai Fei showed a video about 3 fugitives involved in a recent incident. One of the fugitives was a level B, and the other 2 were level E. The man Lu Shu had fought was at level D. Lai Xiao asked the students if they could handle such fugitives, and Sai Fei signaled for Lai Xiao to continue, who then put on a robe and introduced himself formally as their future superior in the Heavenly Network with a code name and a level B ranking. Lai Xiao explained that they had also spotted a suspicious level C individual who had outmatched the level D fugitive with a sword and an energy shield. He told the students to report any sightings of this level C person to him or Sai Fei. Then, he announced that starting this month, they would all receive monthly spirit stones for cultivation. After class, Lu Shu asked Jiang if spirit stones could be sold on the black market. Jiang was curious why Lu Shu would want to sell them when he needed them for his own training. But Lu Shu explained that he just didn't want to constantly worry about money. Jiang mentioned that spirit stones could be sold for around 100,000 on each, and Lu Shu became excited. He immediately asked Jiang if he wanted to buy them, but Jiang declined, saying he would ask around for a buyer. Lu Shu insisted on setting the price at 120,000 yuan and sent Jiang his account number. Jiang agreed to find a buyer and promised to send Lu Shu the money once the deal was made. Later, Lu Shu went home and meditated again. This time, he felt more enlightened and activated a third nebula star. He believed he was getting close to level C while out for a walk. Lu Shu got a call from his teacher, telling him to hurry back to school because the car was about to leave for a mission. The armored car took the students to the mission site, and Lu Shu asked where they were going. Jiang explained that a ruin had opened, and they were going there to protect the area. Lu Shu asked if they were going into the ruin, but Jiang explained that the organization didn't think they were ready, especially Lu Shu, who was still a level F. Curious, Lu Shu asked what the ruins were. Jiang explained that the ruins were believed to be left behind by an alien civilization. They had started appearing recently because of changes in the environment. These ruins attracted many powerful people who fought to control them because they contained herbs, magic tools, and something called the Formation Eye. Whoever obtained the Formation Eye would cause the entire ruin to disappear. Lu Shu thought all of this sounded mysterious, but Jiang whispered that this particular ruin was the only one open in the country so far. When they arrived at the ruin site, Sai Fei told the students that the mission was confidential. He warned them that if they leaked any information, they would be court-martialed. The students were shocked but agreed to keep the mission a secret. They set up camp and began practicing their cultivation. Lu Shu, feeling restless, decided to distract the class leader, earning himself some negative points. Later, Lu Shu and Jiang took a walk around the camp and saw a mountain covered in mist. Lu Shu asked what the mist was, and Jiang explained that it was a portal to the ruin. Suddenly, alarms went off as the mist started moving toward them. Wei Xiao and Sai Fei shouted for everyone to retreat to avoid being caught in the mist. But the mist moved too fast, and most of the students were trapped. Lu Shu and Jiang were pulled into it as well. Lu Shu was thrown to the ground and found himself in a strange area. As he stood up, an axe flew toward him, and he barely dodged it. He saw a skeleton zombie walking toward him, holding the axe. The zombie attacked, but Lu Shu dodged every swing. He grabbed the axe, disarmed the zombie, and threw it to the ground. But the zombie kept crawling toward him. Lu Shu used the axe to decapitate the zombie and finally killed it. Lu Shu was relieved but saw two more zombies approaching. He took them down easily, but then more students came running toward him, screaming for help. Lu Shu turned to see they were being chased by a swarm of zombies. One of the zombies jumped on a student and killed him. Lu Shu quickly beheaded the attacking zombie and fought off the others. He killed most of the zombies, but one sneaked up behind him. Lu Shu blocked its attack with his axe, and they both fell to the ground, struggling. Some students debated whether they should help, but one student suggested they wait and see if Lu Shu could handle it alone. Lu Shu finally rolled over and beheaded the zombie. He walked over to the frightened students and asked what their plan was. They decided it was safest to stay where they were since the zombies had stopped chasing them. Lu Shu asked what they would do if he left. A girl in the group begged him to stay and protect them. Lu Shu told them to run if the zombies came back, explaining that the zombies would stop chasing after a certain distance. He gave them the axe and told them to use it if needed. The girl told the group that if they had helped Lu Shu, he wouldn't have left them. The students argued over who would take the axe, but Lu Shu left it for them and walked away. Lu Shu wandered alone, thinking about Xiaoyu when he heard footsteps behind him. He got ready to fight, and suddenly a zombie horseman appeared, almost spearing him. Lu Shu caught the spear, and they struggled over it. The zombie became angry, and Lu Shu was surprised to see that it earned him an income point. He realized he could use this to his advantage. Lu Shu dragged the spear away from the zombie, causing it to fall. More zombie horsemen appeared, and Lu Shu ran, leading them on a chase. He climbed a hill to escape, but they kept following him. The cavalry captain ordered his men to shoot at Lu Shu, but Lu Shu dodged their attacks and kept climbing higher. Finally, the cavalry captain ordered the zombies to stop chasing Lu Shu, and Lu Shu watched as his negative points increased. The zombies retreated, and Lu Shu grabbed their dropped weapons, a sword, an axe, and the spear filled with mana energy. He used the spear like a sword and easily defeated the remaining zombies. He took their weapons and tied them to his back before continuing his journey. Lu Shu eventually found a quiet spot on a cliff and began meditating. He used the negative points he had collected to level up. He chose a celestial fruit and ate it, feeling his power grow. 3 new nebula stars filled his celestial map, and Lu Shu felt stronger than ever. The officials from the Heavenly Network were having a meeting about the students in the Dao Yuan class. They were disappointed with how easily scared the students were and how weak they seemed in battle. They decided their first plan should be to go after the zombie cavalry captain to protect the rest of the students. They also realized it would be perfect if all the students were as strong as Lu Shu, since he wasn't as weak as they thought at first. As they were talking, they heard footsteps and quickly hid. They saw the zombie army pass by and relaxed. But then, they were shocked when Lu Shu threw a spear that disintegrated one of the zombie horsemen. Lu Shu jumped down the hill and started quickly taking out more zombies before anyone could react. The leader ordered his men to help Lu Shu, but Lu Shu handled the whole situation on his own. After he ran out of spear energy, he switched to his sword and finished off the rest of the zombies. The leader and the other students were impressed. Some students were worried about Lu Shu's safety, but when the leader reached him, Lu Shu calmly stretched out his hand and started collecting all the weapons. This angered the leader and earned Lu Shu even more negative points. The leader asked if Lu Shu was the one who had done all this, and Lu Shu asked how he knew his name. The leader explained that 2 students from the special class had talked about him, the same students Lu Shu had saved earlier. Lu Shu stood his ground and prepared for a fight, but the leader assured him that they didn't want to fight. They were just normal warriors of the Heavenly Network, and they weren't a match for Lu Shu. Lu Shu agreed to give them the swords but kept the other weapons for himself. The leader asked what Lu Shu was planning to do with all the weapons since he couldn't use them all. Lu Shu had an idea. He decided to sell the spears, swords, and armor to anyone who wanted them, calling them the best weapons for 999 on each, on a first-come, first-served basis. But then he realized there was no money, so no one could pay. One student came up and asked for a sword, and Lu Shu noticed the student had a valuable jade pendant. Lu Shu offered to trade the sword for the pendant, but the student angrily refused, and Lu Shu earned more negative points. The students and officials started whispering about what to do. An official then approached Lu Shu with a wristwatch worth 12,000 yen and offered to trade it for a sword. Lu Shu accepted immediately and traded the sword for the watch. Lu Shu continued making deals, exchanging weapons for jewelry and other items. Much to the leader's disappointment, the group continued their journey, and Lu Shu hummed to himself, happy about his sales. They decided to rest for the night, but suddenly a strong wind blew, and ghostly figures appeared around them. The leader warned everyone to stay alert. Lu Shu could feel that the energy from the ghosts was similar to Lu Xiaoyu's energy. His sword started reacting to the energy, and he struggled to control it. As Lu Shu concentrated, his eyes glowed, and the ghosts saw his spirit energy, which scared them off. Everyone was confused, but Lu Shu smiled, knowing he was the reason they fled. The group continued their journey and finally reached the core of the ruin, where they felt a sense of accomplishment. Inside the cave, Lu Shu began selling his remaining weapons to other students and officials. One student came up, hoping to meet the hero who had defeated the zombies, but when they realized Lu Shu was the one selling weapons, they were disappointed. Lu Shu pushed through the crowd and told the student that the real master of the Heavenly Network wanted to meet him. He confidently walked up to the officials, who were surprised by his actions. Zai Fei introduced Lu Shu to Zhang Yudeng, a Class C official in charge of the ruin. Zhang acknowledged Lu Shu and another student named Cao for standing out and said they would need their help. He told Lu Shu to stop selling the spears, which Lu Shu agreed to, while showing off all the jewelry he had collected. Accompanied by the officials and Cao, they approached a large hole in the cave. Zhang used his energy to tell them that the hole was 100 meters deep and led to another cave. He warned them that this ruin was much larger and more complicated than anything they had encountered before. Zhang ordered an official to create stairs down into the cave using earth powers, and they began to descend. Lu Shu was amazed to find that there was hidden light below that wasn't visible from above. A strong gust of wind rushed upward from the cave, causing Lu Shu's chest to glow as his sword reacted. Lai Yixao urged them to keep moving forward, and they entered a brightly lit area at the bottom of the cave. There, they saw an ancient castle, and a group of zombies poured out of the castle gates, led by the zombie cavalry captain, holding a distinct spear. The cavalry captain told them they couldn't leave unless they stayed. Lai Yixao challenged him, saying they would only stay if they could enter the castle. This led to a tense standoff. Lai Yixao secretly hoped to take the cavalry captain's spear, thinking it might be the formation eye, which could make the ruin disappear. Lai Yixao attacked with speed, but the cavalry captain blocked his strikes with his spear. The battle was fierce, and after a while, Xiaoyu managed to land a hit, but the cavalry captain's horse was killed in the process, which made him even angrier. The cavalry captain was furious, but Xiaoyu taunted him, fueling his rage even more. Meanwhile, the officials fought the zombie army. Lu Shu, uninterested in the fight, decided to explore the castle for treasure. He sneaked inside, and his sword started glowing in response to the surroundings. He felt someone watching him. While exploring, Lu Shu received a message from Lu Xiaoyu on his display screen. She scolded him for being late and worrying about him, which gave Lu Shu more negative points. He wondered if she was so concerned that she couldn't sleep. Just as he thought about this, a ghost that had been following him tried to ambush him. Lu Shu quickly dodged and used his sword to defeat the ghost. Lu Shu continued exploring the castle and found a small furry creature on his shoulder. As they moved toward the center of the castle, Lu Shu opened a door expecting to find a demon, but instead, he found a hall filled with statues of samurai warriors holding spears. Lu Shu thought about selling them but felt something behind him. Turning around, he saw the statues coming to life, their eyes glowing red. One statue moved toward him, and the others gathered around him. Lu Shu quickly readied his spear and sword. But when the statues saw his sword, they stopped and went back into position. Lu Shu carefully put away his spear and approached the nearest statue, demanding its spear. The statue refused, which earned Lu Shu more negative points. He threatened the statue with his sword, and the statue finally let go of the spear. Lu Shu collected all the spears from the statues. At the end of the hall, Lu Shu found a table with a scroll that contained information about an escape route. As he read the scroll, the zombie cavalry captain, still fighting Xiaoyu, suddenly stopped and rushed into the castle. Xiaoyu was frustrated when he realized the spear wasn't the formation eye and that the ruin hadn't disappeared. The cavalry captain stormed into the hall and demanded to know what had happened to the spears from the statues. When he saw Lu Shu holding the spears, he rushed toward him to stop him from holding the seal. Lu Shu raised the seal just as the cavalry captain reached him. Time seemed to freeze, and the seal was absorbed into Lu Shu's chest. Everything around them, including the zombies and the castle, began to disappear into the glowing seal Lu Shu now held. In the real world, the mist on the mountain started to clear, and everyone who had been inside the ruin reappeared outside. The survivors were filled with relief and joy as they hugged each other, grateful to be alive. The officials quickly set up a camp to treat the injured and gather information. Zai was busy recording data when Zhang rushed in, worried because Lu Shu was missing. Zai defended Lu Shu and suggested Zhang look for his body. To everyone's surprise, Lu Shu walked in, covered in jewelry and carrying several spears. The others were stunned. Jiang rushed to Lu Shu, relieved that he was safe. Lu Shu explained that Cao had asked him to register and return the weapons. He went to drop off one of the spears but accidentally broke the registration table because it was so heavy. Afterward, Lu Shu went for a walk to find Lu Xiaoyu. He saw her favorite snack wrapper on the ground and looked up to see her sitting on a tree branch. He stretched out his hand for a hug, but she jumped down onto his face. Lu Shu tried to talk to her, saying she should have waited for him at home. She ignored him but checked his condition and was happy to see he was okay. She hugged him, relieved that he hadn't been hurt, and dragged him home. Later, Lu Shu created 2 pearls, one dark and one bright. Lu Xiaoyu asked about them, and Lu Shu explained that the dark pearl was made from the energy of the ghosts in the ruin, while the bright one came from a special ghost. Lu Shu decided to test the dark pearl on the level D criminal. When he fed it to the criminal, the man's power surged dramatically, making him laugh uncontrollably. Lu Shu was amazed at how quickly the pearl increased the man's power. Lu Xiaoyu, however, wasn't happy and said Lu Shu had broken the man with the laughter. She made the man disappear. Lu Shu then cheered Lu Xiaoyu up by revealing 2 fruits he had found in the ruin. Lu Xiaoyu eagerly ate them, and the furry creature that had been following Lu Shu appeared again, chirping at her. She found it cute and cuddled it. Lu Shu explained that it was a clever friend he had met in the ruin. Lu Xiaoyu decided to name it Little Fiery Zoo and fed it a chip. It stopped its antics and enjoyed the snack. Later, Lu Shu meditated with the seal from the ruin and discovered its amazing powers. He realized it was a divine artifact capable of controlling energy and observing the earth. Lu Shu also discovered a second seal inside the first, swirling with darkness. He entered it with his consciousness and found a vast space with hidden spears and a large door. Lu Shu pushed against the door, managing to open it slightly. He saw the castle and realized that he could fully open it once he became stronger. This filled him with excitement for future explorations through the seal. Later, Lu Shu was reading through Lu Xiaoyu's application, feeling worried about her future. He was about to get down, but then he decided to distract himself by playing the lottery on his display screen. Unfortunately, every time he spun it, he only got stinky tofu. It was disappointing, but Lu Shu didn't give up. He tried again and again, but all he got were bowls of food he didn't need. After multiple failed attempts, he lay back on his bed, hoping for a change. This time, as he tapped the screen with his leg, he finally won. The prize was a pearl that looked like a sea fruit. He ate it, and suddenly, time stopped. A white star fell from the sky and entered his body, filling him with energy. When he opened his eyes, Lu Shu found himself in a different, cloudy world. It was peaceful, but the calm didn't last long, and he soon felt disappointed. Determined to try again, he stepped outside, where the old man was sitting. They greeted each other, and Lu Shu thanked the old man for helping him survive in the ruin. Without the old man's training, Lu Shu knew he wouldn't have made it. Lu Shu then asked about the Heavenly Network and what they fought for. The old man explained that their mission was to protect humanity and promote world peace. Lu Shu, skeptical, scoffed at the idea, saying peace was different for everyone, and for him, living peacefully with Lu Xiaoyu was enough. This annoyed the old man, and Lu Shu earned more negative points. The old man took Lu Shu's sword and started walking away, saying that if everyone thought like Lu Shu, the world would just be full of people doing whatever they wanted. But some people misused their power, hurting others. The Heavenly Network worked to balance strength and weakness in the world. The old man also mentioned that swordsmanship training would begin soon. But Lu Shu needed to focus on strengthening his spiritual body, which was essential for their practice. To demonstrate, the old man released energy from his sword into the sky, making it rain briefly. He said this technique was related to the Seven Seas Snow Mountain, which was tied to the sea fruit Lu Shu had eaten. Lu Shu asked how long it would take him to master it. The old man said it was too early for him to learn that yet and suggested Lu Shu focus on visualizing the power needed. Lu Shu visualized a rain cloud and focused on his sword. With some effort, he created a small whirlwind and sliced a falling leaf in half. He was amazed at how far he had come. When Lu Shu went back inside, he found Lu Xiaoyu waking up. She asked who he had been talking to, and he told her to sit down so he could share the good news. She could finally go to school. Lu Xiaoyu protested loudly, saying it wasn't good news and that she didn't want to go. Lu Shu argued that they could now afford things and she couldn't stay home all the time. After some convincing, Lu Xiaoyu agreed, mostly because she didn't want to miss out on her favorite food. Lu Shu smiled, glad his plan worked. The next day, Lu Shu took Lu Xiaoyu to her new school. She immediately complained about the school bag he gave her, calling it childish. Lu Shu told her to stop fussing, reminding her that everyone had a school bag. He leaned in and whispered that she shouldn't show off her strength or get into fights with other students. Reluctantly, Lu Xiaoyu agreed. Lu Shu assured her that she would have the chance to reveal her abilities at the right time. At Lu Shu's school, Zai greeted him warmly and thanked him for joining the organization. He also announced that Lu Shu would be promoted to lieutenant because of his contributions in the ruin, which made Lu Shu excited, especially for the higher salary. Zai then surprised him by giving him a hug and welcoming him as a new colleague. This was the first time anyone had been so friendly to Lu Shu. Xiao, the leader, stood up and called all the students to line up. He welcomed them to the foundation and gave a speech. Although he stumbled over his lines and had to read from a paper, he spoke about the foundation's history and encouraged everyone to stay strong despite the challenges ahead. After the speech, Xiao led the students in taking an oath, with some students nervously participating. Once it was over, Lu Shu went back to his training with the old man. The old man introduced Lu Shu to Dianzi techniques, which were known for their big effects with little effort. He compared them to a dragonfly, making ripples in a river despite its lightness. Lu Shu practiced sword swings, focusing on a cumulus cloud in the cloudy realm. At first, the cloud reacted angrily, but Lu Shu persisted, gradually gaining control. Despite his progress, he still struggled to fully control the cloud. The old man reminded him to be patient, explaining that manipulating a cloud to make rain was no easy task. Lu Shu reflected on the difference between using physical strength for sword practice and the delicate control needed for cloud manipulation. The old man shared a belief that people in the past feared the collapse of clouds, but Lu Shu found the idea exciting instead of scary. The old man didn't mind and continued teaching him. Eventually, Lu Shu gained control of the cloud, making it rain in the real world. His sword swung with power, demonstrating a strong technique. The old man was impressed with Lu Shu's progress but warned him not to get too proud. Lu Shu asked why he could turn clouds into rain. The old man cautioned him that turning rain into a river and a river into an ocean were the next steps. He explained that the Seven Seas Snow Mountain was always evolving, and Lu Shu needed to continue training. Lu Shu, thankful for the old man's help, offered to take Lu Xiaoyu on a summer trip since the old man had been reading books all day. Lu Shu and Lu Xiaoyu boarded a bus for their trip. Lu Shu saw the priest but didn't talk to him. Lu Xiaoyu happily settled into her seat. As the bus filled, a group entered who gave Lu Shu strange, disdainful looks. The tour guide introduced the trip, which would include visiting Mount Ryu, camping by a lake, and then hiking the mountain. The guide told them the legend of Mount Ryu. When they arrived at the lake, everyone set up camp. Lu Shu and Lu Xiaoyu looked out at the lake. Lu Shu asked Lu Xiaoyu what her happiest memory was. At first, she mentioned seeing him buy vegetables and cook dinner, but when pressed, she admitted that eating together was her happiest moment. Lu Shu smiled, recalling the good times they shared. Suddenly, Lu Shu noticed Liang Qi passing by on a motorcycle. He wondered where the magic performer was going and realized that the dragnet hadn't caught him yet. He also sensed that Liang Qi's energy had improved. When Lu Xiaoyu asked what was wrong, Lu Shu shrugged it off, saying it was nothing. At night, Lu Shu walked Lu Xiaoyu to her tent, even though she complained about bedtime rules. As they settled in, Lu Shu noticed a convoy of cars driving by with Liang Qi and his acquaintance. Curious, Lu Shu followed them to a clearing where the cars parked. He wondered if there was a ruin there. He considered reporting it but hesitated. Just then, Jiang appeared and asked why Lu Shu was there. Lu Shu explained that he had brought Lu Xiaoyu on a trip. Jiang told him the area was rumored to have a ruin appearing soon, and the organization was investigating it. Jiang invited Lu Shu to join them, and Lu Shu agreed, figuring it was a good chance to get involved. The next day, some passengers argued with the tour guide, demanding refunds because the trip had ended unexpectedly. The guide explained that only the travel agency could issue refunds. Lu Shu and Lu Xiaoyu approached the group, and Lu Shu told them they were going to Chalk Salt Lake, which surprised everyone. Lu Shu, Lu Xiaoyu, and Jiang crossed a barricade to get to the lake. The guards stopped Lu Xiaoyu for not having the right documents, but Jiang showed the necessary paperwork, and they were allowed through. They reached the camp, and Lu Xiaoyu was impressed by the preparations for the ruin operation. The next day, practitioners from a rival organization arrived to participate in the ruin operation. Their leader addressed them, saying their goal was to eliminate any obstacles in the ruin and destroy the formation eye to make it disappear. The group entered the mist, and Lu Shu told Lu Xiaoyu that if they got separated, she should meet him at the center of the ruin. Lu Xiaoyu was excited to fight alongside him. Inside the ruin, Lu Shu found himself in a forest. Some practitioners complained about the surroundings, but Lu Shu remembered Jiang's advice about fluctuating spiritual energy in ruins. He searched for the strongest energy and found it, following his group as night fell. They reached a clearing and decided to camp there. Lu Shu suggested camping there but was dismissed by the others who pressed on. Lu Shu decided to stay behind, warning them to run if danger came their way. Meanwhile, Lu Xiaoyu was looking for Lu Shu. She met a wild boar but tamed it and rode it through the forest. She encountered a group of practitioners who were amazed by her skills. She told them she was a beast controller and asked if they had seen Lu Shu. Lu Shu, watching from a branch, noticed another group. As they settled, their leader warned them about approaching animals. Lu Shu revealed himself and joked that he flew in from the east. This annoyed the group, and Lu Shu earned negative points. He checked his display screen and noticed a number as a name, suspecting that there was a spy in the group. Lu Shu planned how to trap the spy when a leopard attacked. Lu Shu saved a young man, but the group questioned his actions. Lu Shu explained that he chased the leopard away instead of killing it, earning mixed reactions. He noticed that one of the officials had the same numbered name, confirming his suspicion that they might be the spy. Lu Shu was sitting, enjoying his stinky tofu when he noticed the spy watching him from a distance. After a while, the spy suddenly attacked, putting everyone else to sleep. Lu Shu, unaware, decided to find out more about the spy. As he ran through the forest, vines tried to grab him, but he sliced them apart without breaking a sweat. From a tree, Lu Shu called out to the spy. The spy quickly moved to attack, but Lu Shu kicked him in the face and brushed against his chin, revealing a strange mark on his palm. Lu Shu then summoned his spear, surprising the spy. The spy tried to fight back, but Lu Shu easily disarmed him and slammed him to the ground. The spy threw some knives at Lu Shu, but he dodged them and threw his spear back. The spear barely missed the spy but sliced a tree behind him. Lu Shu, getting the spy cornered, took his weapons and clothes, demanding to know how many other spies were out there. The spy claimed he was alone, but Lu Shu wasn't convinced. He lied to the spy, telling him he was a special agent from Skynet, hunting down spies, and that he had already taken down another one in the mountains. The spy, finally giving in, admitted there were other spies, and he even shared the code to contact them. He said the codes were based on their zodiac signs. Lu Shu figured they'd be in serious trouble if Chen Bailey showed up. The spy begged for mercy, and Lu Shu agreed to let him go. But before they could talk more, vines attacked again, pulling the spy into a tree. Lu Shu tried to save him, but the spy disappeared. The next morning, everyone woke up, only to find that teacher Lai Lai was missing. They quickly realized that he was also a spy. The leader decided to search for him, and some students volunteered to help. After searching all night, they couldn't find any trace of him, and the leader reluctantly called off the search. Lu Shu, feeling satisfied with the points he got from the spy, tried to unlock his 7th star in his celestial map. But, to his frustration, the star absorbed his energy without awakening, making him even more upset. Lu Shu was now feeling down, but he quickly turned his attention to a new problem. From the tree where he was sitting, he noticed something chaotic up ahead. He rushed to the area, using his compass to guide him. When he got there, he saw a tornado spinning rapidly. Lu Shu used his energy to shield himself from the powerful winds and pushed forward until he reached the tornado's core. He smashed it apart, sending the pieces scattering into the forest. Once the tornado was destroyed, Lu Shu turned his attention to the caster behind it. The caster, who had caused the tornado, tried to create another one to attack Lu Shu, but Lu Shu quickly dispersed it before it could form. The caster ran, and Lu Shu chased him with his sword. The caster, trying to find an opening, attacked Lu Shu, but Lu Shu was faster, and his sword sliced the caster's face. The caster, scared, thought he was about to die. He tried to shoot sand bullets at Lu Shu, but the sword wasn't fast enough to block them all. Some of the bullets flew past Lu Shu and almost hit him. The caster began to regret underestimating Lu Shu, realizing that he was dealing with a much stronger opponent. Just as one of the sand bullets nearly hit Lu Shu, something changed. Lu Shu unlocked the 7th star in his celestial map, and the star flew to him, filling him with energy. He felt a mix of emotions: happiness, anger, fear, and sadness. With the new power, Lu Shu threw his wand, piercing through all the sand bullets and hitting the caster, killing him instantly. The caster turned into sand and disappeared into the ground. Lu Shu watched as the caster's spirit flew away, sensed by other nearby spirits. The next morning, Xiaoyu found Lu Shu, relieved to see him. He quickly explained what had happened with the spy, and they noticed some other spies watching them from tree branches. Xiaoyu suggested using her animals to attack, but Lu Shu told her to wait. He wanted to first find out how many spies were out there and how strong they were. He planned to use a squirrel as a messenger to gather information. As Lu Shu moved closer to the spies, he saw a man giving hand signals. 3 lookouts jumped down and mimicked his signs, allowing him to pass through. Lu Shu recalled that the spy had said the code was based on the 3rd digit of their zodiac sign. He wondered what his own code was. Lu Shu disguised himself as one of the spies and tried the same signals. The lookout copied him, allowing Lu Shu to pass. Lu Shu entered a cave and found himself in a strange, pink world with a big pink tree in the center. The other spies had already arrived, and the leader announced that they had won and reached the ruin first. Lu Shu realized that there were too many of them for him to fight alone, but as he checked their spiritual energy, he noticed that some had weak energy. A few were C classes and others were D classes. However, 4 of them had no energy at all. He thought this was strange, so he decided to investigate. As Lu Shu got closer, he realized the 4 weren't lacking energy, they were blocking it. They were stronger than he thought. One of the 4 was examining the tree and found a passage blocked by thick roots and branches. He said that the tree would close during the day but would open at night. The spy leader became worried, saying they couldn't wait until nightfall because Chen Bailey might arrive at any moment. He ordered the others to force the tree open. They cast fireballs at the tree, causing an explosion, but the roots quickly covered the hole, reducing the impact of their attack. Lu Shu watched all of this from the shadows and decided that the best move was to delay them until Jiang arrived. Suddenly, Liang Qi spotted Lu Shu and recognized him. He called out, and the others quickly recognized him too. The leader asked what was going on, and Liang Qi explained that he had tried to burn Lu Shu, but Lu Shu wasn't affected. The priest mentioned that Lu Shu had followed them on the tour bus. The leader ordered his men to surround Lu Shu and draw their swords. Lu Shu ignored them and walked toward the leader. He made the code sign and said his pseudonym was Lily, claiming he had something important to report. The leader believed him when one of his men confirmed Lu Shu's description. Lu Shu told the leader that Jiang was dead, shocking everyone. The leader asked how Lu Shu knew, and Lu Shu explained that he had seen it with his own eyes. He showed them some white sand, which the leader recognized as deep-sea white sand. Lu Shu said the sand had been drilled into him by a man who then fled after Lu Shu injured him with his sword. The leader laughed and announced that Jiang was dead. The group cheered, and the leader told Lu Shu to follow him, promising a reward when they returned to their organization, known as God's Collection. The priest and Liang Qi, thinking Lu Shu was a spy, asked him to confirm. Lu Shu admitted that he was sent by the organization but kept his cover to avoid blowing it. The leader agreed, emphasizing that the organization's mission was the most important thing. The leader then turned to Liang Qi and told him not to take it personally, but now he had to prove himself. Liang Qi went back to the tree and tried burning it again, but the roots wouldn't budge. The priest approached him, asking why he kept trying. Liang Qi said he couldn't betray the organization because they had saved him, but he asked the priest to trust his decision. Just then, the leader received news that students from the Dao Yuan class had made it to the center of the ruin. Lu Shu was happy to see his comrades. The leader and his team entered, and Zhang introduced himself as a lieutenant of the Dragnet. The leader showed his ID and Zhang asked how they had arrived so quickly, having seen a flare of flame when they entered. The leader explained that they were investigating some intruders who had gotten into the ruin. One of the classmates told Zhang they had experienced some disruptions in their formation, and the leader said they would investigate before entering. Zhang agreed, but his men received orders to attack the students. Lu Shu sent his furry friend to warn Zhang just in time, and he stopped the attack. Cao dodged an attack and counterattacked, while the other students took out the attacker. Zhang called out that they were under attack, and a fight broke out between the students and the spies. The leader, confused about how the students had figured out they were spies, saw the furry return to Lu Shu's side. Lu Shu was glad everything had worked out and trusted Zhang to handle the rest. The leader orders his men to attack, thinking the students are outnumbered. The students struggle at first, but then Cao saves one student who was about to be attacked. Zhang quickly orders everyone to fight back to back and stay together. Lu Xiaoyu decides to help by using her animals. She draws a sign on her palm, which her furry friend runs to deliver. Lu Xiaoyu arrives with her animal friends just as the fight is getting worse. She hasn't seen Lu Shu's signal yet, but when the furry friend shows her what Lu Shu drew, an OK sign, she knows it's time to act. The spies think they've surrounded all the students, but then Lu Xiaoyu's animals charge in, taking down the spies one by one. Lu Xiaoyu gives Zhang a thumbs up, and he announces to the other students that the animals are on their side. This surprises the spies and turns the fight in the students' favor. The leader, angry, orders Liang Qi to keep burning the roots, while the rest of his men stay in the fight. Lu Shu yells at Liang Qi to keep burning the roots while Zhang makes his way to the leader. Liang Qi fights back with a phoenix attack, but Zhang leaps over it to face him. The phoenix flies back and burns Zhang. A spy throws ninja stars at Zhang, but Cao jumps in front to protect him. The spies start closing in on both Zhang and Cao, ready to attack. One spy tries to sneak attack them with more ninja stars, but Lu Shu summons his keg and uses it to control the spy, making him throw the stars at his own team. Lu Shu knocks the spy out before he can fight back. The leader says there's no time to waste, so they move on toward the ruin. He draws his sword, and Lu Shu senses something special about it. The leader slashes with the sword and destroys the roots in one cut, stopping them from regenerating. The leader and his men jump into the entrance of the ruin, and Lu Shu feels a sense of worry for Lu Xiaoyu. He heads down after them, and Lu Xiaoyu tries to follow, but the spies stop her. The Dragnet members finally reach the center of the ruin, and the spies begin to retreat, trying to force their way into the tree entrance. The leader and his men are making their way through when one of them is suddenly grabbed by a vine and strangled. Liang Qi tries to push through to join them, but the others push him away. When the Dragnet members show up, Liang Qi quickly creates a firewall to keep them out, but an official jumps through, ready to fight. Before Liang Qi can respond, an acquaintance blows dust at him, weakening him and causing the firewall to fall apart. Liang Qi calls the man a traitor, and the official knocks him out. The officials capture all the spies, and Zhang leaves them with the official as they continue to follow the leader. Lu Xiaoyu follows them, trying to get through the entrance with her boar. Inside the tree, Zhang and his group are walking, trying to figure out where the spies went. Cao spots someone wrapped up in vines and calls the group over. They realize the person has been swallowed by the vines. Suddenly, creatures made of vines attack them, but Cao saves Zhang by stabbing one of the creatures. They continue fighting, easily destroying most of the vine creatures. However, the ground shakes and a huge flower emerges. Its vines begin capturing them one by one. Zhang and Cao try to cut through the vines, but they are too strong. One spy gets caught by the flower and almost eaten, but Lu Xiaoyu arrives just in time. She rides her boar into the flower, knocking it over and revealing its core. Zhang clears the vines for Cao, who leaps into the air and throws her spear at the core, shattering it. The flower monster is defeated, and everyone trapped by its vines is freed. Someone asks Zhang if that was the formation's eye, but he says that if it were, they would have reacted differently. Xiaoyu, eager to find Lu Shu, asks which direction he went. Meanwhile, Lu Shu watches as the spy group is captured by the vines. He notices that the creatures are attacking those with higher spiritual energy, even pushing one person into the flower's mouth. The rest of the spies are trying to escape. The leader orders everyone to gather around him and form a spiritual energy shield, protecting them from the creatures. He warns that anyone who steps outside the shield will be left vulnerable. Lu Shu, feeling trapped, comes up with an idea to create a stinky smell using stinky tofu. The spies start complaining about the smell, but they don't stop since they've come prepared with gas masks. The leader says the smell must be from a plant, but the creatures aren't scared of the shield anymore. The leader orders them to figure out who caused the smell. Lu Shu smears the tofu on one of the spies' clothes. Soon, the shield fails and the creatures start attacking again. Lu Shu continues using the tofu, but one spy catches him and calls him a spy. Lu Shu smashes the tofu in the spy's face and runs away, with the creatures attacking him. Lu Shu slices through the creatures, summoning more tofu to throw at them, causing the creatures to attack each other. The spy fights off the creatures and goes after Lu Shu, but Lu Shu summons a corpse dog, which cuts the spy's sword in half, making him fall. The spy picks up the broken sword to fight again, but Lu Shu controls the corpse dog to kill him. Lu Shu follows his compass to the center of the ruin and sees the leader and his men entering. The leader lights up the center with a flare, and Lu Shu spies on them, sensing the vine sand that collects energy from the trees and is being funneled into the huge flower in the room. One of the men suggests cutting the flower to stop the formation eye from fully developing, but the leader says they have time since Chen Bailey is dead and the students will probably be defeated by the ruined creatures. Lu Shu laughs because he knows that's not going to happen. He sneaks into the room, but the leader senses him and turns, sending a slash at Lu Shu with his sword. Lu Shu dodges just in time, and the men surround him, demanding to know who he is. Lu Shu briefly shows his Dragnet ID, claiming to be a lieutenant in counterintelligence. This annoys the leader, who says Dragnet doesn't have such a department. Lu Shu insists that it does and that his job is to find spies. The leader gives Lu Shu one last chance to drop his weapon, but Lu Shu pulls out the seal, which shines brightly, temporarily blinding everyone. By the time the light fades, Lu Shu has already disappeared, running in the opposite direction. The leader and his men chase him, but Lu Shu leaps into the air and uses his sword to fight them off, summoning spears and throwing them at the leader. The leader counters every spear with ease, showing no signs of injury. Lu Shu summons another sword and prepares for the fight. The leader taunts Lu Shu, saying he's just going to die for nothing. Lu Shu focuses and summons a cumulus cloud. A drop of rain falls on his sword, transforming it into another sword. Lu Shu directs the water sword toward the leader, but the leader blocks it with his own sword and retaliates with a swift slash toward Lu Shu's neck. Lu Shu dodges and counters, slicing the leader in the neck. The other two adversaries prepare to attack together, but Lu Shu's attempt to repeat his rain trick fails. As the two spies close in, the ground begins to rumble. Lu Shu looks up and sees Xiaoyu arriving with the other students. He's relieved to see her, but suddenly the entrance is blocked by vines, and the formation eye guard awakens. The leader orders the other two to sacrifice their lives for him, and their blood flows into him, transforming his body with their life force. Lu Shu finds himself in a tight spot, fighting both the leader and the formation eye guard, who has emerged from the flower monster. Lu Shu tries to attack with his sword, but the vines are too strong. He's knocked around and finds it harder to keep up. Desperate, Lu Shu tries to reach the entrance, but the leader punches him in the gut, and the vines grab him, pulling him toward the monster's mouth. Lu Shu fears it's the end. Meanwhile, outside, Xiaoyu and Zhang are trying to remove the vines blocking the entrance. Xiaoyu cries out, fearing Lu Shu is dead. Suddenly, someone enters the cave and cuts the vines, saving Lu Shu. The monsters turn toward the new threat, revealing it to be Naiting. His arrival shocks the leader. With incredible speed, Naiting moves toward the monster and ends its life effortlessly. The leader, now empowered by the blood of the spies, boasts about his power as a high-level B-class fighter. He prepares to eliminate Lu Shu, but Naiting intervenes, countering the leader's attack with spiritual energy and eliminating him in an instant. Lu Shu thanks Naiting, asking why he didn't intervene sooner. Naiting explains he wanted to see Lu Shu in action. Lu Shu jokes, asking if he did well, and Naiting acknowledges his potential, suggesting there's always room for improvement. Before leaving, Naiting reveals he has already locked the formation eye and invites Lu Shu to visit him when he returns. As the ruin starts to disappear, everyone is transported back to the real world. Jiang and the others rush to Lu Shu, relieved that he's okay. Lu Xiaoyu, riding her boar, jumps into his arms, tears streaming down her face. She says she thought he had died. Lu Shu reassures her that he's fine and everything is okay now. And that's where this video ends. Watch this next video and I'll see you later.